Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to a chilling bonus episode of Strange Darkness Radio, your gateway to the unseen and the unknown. As shadows lengthen and night descends, welcome to a realm where reality blurs and the impossible becomes plausible. This is Strange Darkness Radio. What lurks in the spaces between what we know and what we fear? Tonight, we'll peel back the veil on secrets long buried. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the unknown, where ghostly whispers echo and creatures of legend may lurk just out of sight. Steel your nerves and open your mind as we venture into the strange darkness. The boundary between reality and nightmare awaits. Let's see who's tonight's guest host of the bonus episode. Or if Bobby will be guiding us through the darkness alone. You're listening to Strange Darkness Radio.
We get it almost every night. And when that moon gets big and bright, it's a supernatural delight. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight.
Welcome to a bonus episode of Strange Darkness Radio. And actually, I do have a special guest. Normally, it would be Marley on tonight's show, but she had prior engagements, so she couldn't join. But tonight, we have Kyler, his first podcast, and the guest that's on tonight for him to be his first podcast is going to be extraordinary. So, hey, Kyler, what's up, man?
Man, not too much, man. Like I said, it's good to finally be in here. I know we talked about it for a while.
Yes.
We're trying to make sure we can get something started now. So, and yeah, I mean, hey, thankfully we got a good one to get on here for the first time. So, hey, that'll work.
Oh, yes, for sure.
It started off exciting.
Exactly. Tonight is very interesting. There's not too many people that I'm impressed by when I hear their background or their story when it comes to whether it's government conspiracies, whether it's UFOs or the paranormal. But this particular guest tonight has an extraordinary story and an extraordinary book. And I'm going to let Benson get into it. Here we go.
Welcome to Strange Darkness Radio, where we peel back the veil of deception and expose the sinister machinations lurking in the shadows of our society. Tonight we delve into the nightmarish realm of government-sanctioned atrocities perpetrated against unsuspecting citizens. Our guest, Olivia James, is not just an author, but a living testament to the horrifying depths of human experimentation conducted by those sworn to protect us. Born into a world of criminality, Olivia's fate took a twisted turn as she became an unwitting pawn in the government's most insidious projects. Olivia's mind was shattered through systematic torture and trauma-based conditioning, creating a fractured psyche with over 100 distinct personalities. These alters were weaponized for nefarious purposes, from espionage to occult rituals, and even missions beyond the confines of our planet. The Grey Mouse series isn't mere fiction. It's a chilling expose of the government's involvement in mind control, interdimensional travel, and the exploitation of human consciousness. Olivia's accounts of encounters with shadow entities and demonic forces raise disturbing questions about the true nature of reality and the dark forces our leaders may be consorting with. As Olivia continues to piece together her fragmented memories, a horrifying picture emerges of a vast conspiracy involving not just government agencies, but corporations and otherworldly beings. Her testimony suggests that countless others may have been subjected to similar ordeals, their minds and bodies used as playthings for the elite's twisted ambitions. Tonight, we'll explore the possibility that the very fabric of our society is built on a foundation of lies, manipulation, and unspeakable crimes against humanity. Olivia's story is a wake-up call, urging us to question everything we think we know about our world and those who govern it. Brace yourselves, listeners. The truth we're about to uncover on Strange Darkness Radio may shake you to your core and forever alter your perception of reality. The government's darkest secrets are about to be exposed, and nothing will ever be the same.
Olivia, welcome to Strange Darkness Radio. I definitely want to thank you for coming on tonight's show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, definitely. Kind of breaking up a little bit, but ladies and gentlemen, we are on Skype. You know how the Skype gods sometimes, let alone, hopefully the government is not listening to this phone call. So yes.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah,
I'm sure they are.
Exactly. So yes, tell, your story there's so much detail to it, and it's so, just involved. But give us some background about you and your story.
Okay, I'm going to start kind of from the beginning, and if I break up a little, just let me know, and I'll try to backtrack.
Okay.
I always usually start at the beginning because that was so integral to the story and how I became involved in this.
Definitely.
So I always like to start by talking about my parents and how I had the most interesting parents and an interesting childhood. So my father, he was recruited at a very young age for the military intelligence at about 18. He went into military intelligence, and he worked in the German-Russian border as a code breaker, and he spoke German. So he did that. And when he came out of the military, he started working with different groups, and he got involved with some kind of like nefarious groups like cartels and other three-letter agencies. And if anybody knows anything about the drug trade in the early 60s and 70s, there was a lot of government involvement in that. It's pretty well known.
Definitely.
So he started working with cartels and doing major drug trafficking across the border, and he used various methods like boat, plane, car, and even my mom was helping with bus, and they would go by bus to traffic. So they were making so much money, more money than most people that age usually were used to making.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of living the high life. And what was the downfall is that he became addicted to his product. So it was heroin that he was trafficking.
Oh. So
he started to get addicted, and he started to make mistakes. And, obviously if he's not, he couldn't focus on what they wanted him to do, that was, causing a lot of problems for the business. It was a business at that time. So, and a business and more. It was very complex what they were doing and trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
So as he was, fumbling around with his addiction, they felt like that weakness in him was causing too many issues, and they started doing things like they'd had a few raids one raid to scare him, and nothing really changed, and he had like a strange life, he had a lot of death threats and that, and it's because I know my father's dead now, and we actually have a better relationship now past than when he was alive.
Interesting.
And he says now, that he's passed, that it was because, everything was so stressful because there's always somebody that wants to take it away from you. And that's what his biggest worry was, that, he had gotten so big that there was always people around that wanted what he had.
Yes. And you're in contact with him since he's passed on,
yes.
Correct? Okay. We'll definitely get into that.
Actually, more than I did when he was alive. So it's really interesting. So he ended up having a second raid, and that one they finally took him away, and there was this huge public trial. It was in the newspapers and everything. It was very public, and he had really fancy lawyer, that kind of thing. And it was looking like he was going to go to prison for the rest of his life, and that time during where the drug laws were and everything. So he was going to go to prison for a long time. And at the end of the trial, it went on for quite a while, And because I remember seeing the newspaper clippings and everything. My mom had kept those, for a long time during our childhood.
Yes.
And they ended up just dismissing everything. One day they just said, it's all dismissed. We have the wrong person. Let him go.
Oh,
Which
wow.
they did not have the wrong person, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, they let him go. And they ended up giving him a government job. So they hired like a known heroin addict and drug trafficker for a government position, which was really interesting. But what I found out is the reason why he got let go is because he had to give something for them, like an exchange to stay out of prison.
Mhm.
And it was his cowardice. He was a coward because he'd rather, let go of something than go to prison. And that thing he had to let go was me. So he
Oh,
ended
wow.
up letting them have me. He signed me over to them to use, and he got to stay out of prison.
Now, when
And
you
he got to
say
have a
them,
normal
are you talking about the government or the cartel?
government.
Okay.
I usually say 3-letter agency,
Oh,
but
okay.
if you
Yeah.
research it's
Exactly.
known,
Yeah.
a 3-letter agency, we know.
Oh, for
So
sure.
it was a 3-letter agency that, took that on. And so that was how I kind of got introduced into the programs. And I was very young. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old when it started to be implemented. And there's a lot of people that say different things in the community about why and how they choose certain people. And it's so strange to even think about, because I did a lot of research, I met a lot of people and
Mhm.
having my own memories. And we all, there's a lot of discussion about us being targeted, certain people being targeted is because of a specific bloodline. And I had no idea, because I grew up really poor. Once my father lost everything, we were extremely poor. And I never thought that, I would see anything, but in working on bloodline history for quite a few years, I saw what they were talking about. And that kind of blew my mind that, to validate that they are, they're choosing specific people based on certain bloodlines, which I
Yes.
thought was really
So
interesting.
you believe that
And
the government knew this already, and that's why they asked, for you particular.
that's why they chose him.
Oh, that's why they chose him to inevitably
And
get to one of his children. Because do you have siblings or is it just you?
yes, several siblings, and also grandmother too was involved.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's because something in the bloodline is leaving us with, I don't know, what they call particular abilities.
Mhm.
I feel like the main ability that they're looking for is dissociation, because the ability to dissociate makes you, a prime, target for somebody that could be programmed with
Brainwashed.
alters.
Yeah.
So it's like a blessing and a curse, in a
Mhm.
way. The dissociation helps you release your body from trauma, but at the same time, the curse is that people want to use that to build up these altars in you.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how that happened. So I'm gonna move on to the MK Ultra part,
Okay.
where I think I was about 6 or 7 from what I can remember. And like I said, I had a lot of conscious recall. When I first started getting memories of this, a lot of it was conscious recall, where things were slipping into my subconscious. And it was driving me crazy because there was things that I didn't remember. I always describe it like being like a dream within a dream within a dream. It's like seeping so many different places. It was hard to pinpoint. I don't understand why I'm thinking of this, why, big pieces of information were popping through my mind,
Mhm.
Things like that. So I got taken to a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast. It's no longer open. And I actually asked my mother one time, I said, do you ever remember me leaving and, you not knowing? And the only thing she said, it's possible. That's all she said. So I don't.
Yes, as
I
a
don't
mother,
know
you
what that
would
means.
know if your child obviously is missing or gone, or
Yeah, she said
yeah,
it's
you went to your aunt's house for like a month, and then you came back, whatever, stuff like that. But that's
yes.
odd.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure if they had they programmed her in some way, or, something like that. But at this psychiatric hospital, I believe I was taken there by a black van. When I got there, the programmer, she greeted me outside. They brought me in, and I still remember exactly what she looks like, and I always remember the day because she was wearing a white satin pantsuit, and she had gray hair, and she had it pinned up on the sides. And, she wasn't like a threatening presence to me, that despite what they did, she didn't seem threatening at all. She had two assistants that were kind of what they would call, like back in the day, they would call them orderlies or whatever. They used to call nurses assistants orderlies. So, they had the, kind of like a medical outfit on, two males. And what she was doing is they were trying to practice something. There was only one other child in this particular program, and his name was Jacob. And they don't always give us our own names. We take on different names.
Oh.
And that's just a way to take your identity from you in a way.
Yeah.
They, people think that it's just something we make up, but it's a way to take your identity and say, no, you're not this person. You're this person. So it was just one other child there, and they wanted to create something called syncopated dissociation, from what I know. And that's a way where we're both being systematically tortured at the same time in order to dissociate at the same time. And that was something that they were experimenting with, because they thought if you could do it at the same time, that it could create some type of strong energy connection and, some type of force. And they felt like a lot of this was I don't know, scientifically, they were able to make this measurable. That's what they were attempting, to make a lot of these processes measurable.
Yeah.
So they were doing what I consider like a systematic abuse. So they had this one place in there, it was called the playroom, and that's where most of the torture took place. And they specifically choose that to shatter your psyche in the first place, because of course, children associate playrooms with fun and things like that. But
for sure.
the way they were doing things, they were making sure that we connected that with pain and trauma. We connected that childhood memory with pain and trauma.
Now, do you know if
So
this was a government facility, or was this just some standard hospital, but then they had a certain, area that they would work out of?
Yeah, it was a standard hospital, and they had like a wing out and back. And this particular place had underground tunnels. They had kind of like a separate, almost like a separate building where they had us, a different wing, but it was a self-sustaining kind of like hospital. Nobody had to come there. They did everything on their own. So it was a way to keep things very private. And especially with being such a small program, it was very specific what they were attempting at this. And somehow me and this other child, they expected us to be, something special in the way that they were looking at things, not just the fact that, we were special kids, just, in the way that we could dissociate and handle abuse is what they were looking for. So they were practicing systematic torture, which would be like, I want to say, it was almost like a preschool program where every, 10 to 15 minutes, the activity would change, a different type of abuse. It would be psychological, mental, physical, sexual, all the different, aspects of
and
abuse.
what age were you
They were
again?
attempting those.
What age?
I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
And so was the other boy. He was about 6 or 7 years old too. So they were attempting this. And also the programmer, the main handler, was a woman. She was using LSD, electroshock therapy, and a lot of hypnosis. And they were using things like flashing lights. They were having us watch, various like these older cartoons that were pretty dark, just different things to seep into your mind, And after a while, we became very adapted to that specific abuse and trauma. And that's what their, goal was, for us to not want anything. We didn't ask for anything. We didn't ask to use the bathroom. We didn't ask for food. We didn't ask for anything, because if you did ask for something, then you would be harmed. So we stopped doing all that. And that's what they wanted. They wanted you to lose that part of yourself to where you're just sitting there like a robot, waiting for direction and, things like that, because they feel like those types of behavior.
But here's the thing. This type of torture is something that a teenager, adults eventually will succumb to, because it's just inevitable. A child wants to please. Children are usually people pleasers. So when you give them a particular task, and even if they don't complete the task, they're disappointed in themselves that there's all types of different ways to get a child to do what you want them to do. But now, when you say to be able to disassociate, to basically have no emotion, then that's a whole nother thing. As far as and being that you guys already have that ability, these are drastically extreme measures, because even if you don't have that, it's like, okay, I'm not getting feedback that you care one way or the other about me whooping you or me not giving you food, or let alone drug induced, because as any type of narcotic like LSD, mushrooms, you can mentally use it to induce visions and to manipulate the mind in the sense of what reality actually is. And so I wonder,
Oh yeah,
why were they
that's what
doing
they're
that?
trying.
Like what was the point of doing this?
It was all experimentation and trying to to reach that outer level of the mind.
Yeah.
And they were pretty successful, because I remember me and him were both being laying down in these hospital beds, and they had just they were doing electroshock therapy, and I remember looking over at him, and he wasn't in his body. He literally looked like a spirit. And then I was able to leave my body, because at that point we escaped the body because of the trauma to the body. Our almost like our spirits escaped it. So
Yeah.
you're able to push that pain away that way. And that was the only time that we could be children, is when we dissociated that far, where we left our bodies.
Mhm.
And that's when we would play, like, kind of run around together, and our regular bodies would be laying in the hospital bed being tortured, and then our spirits would be playing together. That was the only time we could be children.
Now let me ask you this question. Do you think you were on LSD at those times? Because that is the effect of LSD.
There was some times that we were, yes. And that's the measure that they wanted to see anyways. That's what they wanted to see, what the effect was of LSD. But there were other times we weren't on that, and that we had learned to do it, because of the impact of that trauma. And that's what they wanted. So after, I think it was about 6 months, we were successful, and that we had reached what they wanted to do with us. And they used a lot of hypnosis, and that's how they came to know kind of like who I was in my past lives and in the inside of me, because a lot of the past lives are still inside you at a cellular level. They're way down deep. They haven't been eliminated. Yeah, they haven't been eliminated. And I'm not saying that before these memories, that I believed or didn't believe any of this. I'm not a particularly religious person, so I didn't I'm not saying I believed or didn't believe, but I believe in myself, and I believe what I saw, and I believe what I heard. And that was a time where they found out who I was. And so she ended up referring me out to another program, which is like a special sector program.
And what
So I
age
ended
was
up
this?
same age, about
Oh, same
7.
age. Oh, okay, because this is only a 6
So I
month
was
time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty quick, because the torture was so extreme. I mean, some people are taking places for years, but it just depends on the program. Like I said, and there was only 2 of us. So they sent me to this office, and it would look like an attorney's office. It was very nice, and a lot of like neutral leather furniture and everything. I looked like I was just, going for an appointment. But there was this really old, frail gentleman there, and he was wearing like he was just very thin, and he was balding on the top. He had white hair, and he didn't have any hair on the top, and he was wearing these really thin wire glasses, kind of like the old school kind. And his name was Dr. Green. And a lot of people say, and I'm not quite sure because I only know him as Dr. Green, but a lot of people say Dr. Green is another name for Mangala.
It's time for a break. Catch up on our latest episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't miss out on the spine-chilling stories and paranormal discussions that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Follow us on TikTok and YouTube for exclusive behind-the-scenes content, teaser clips, and more. Dive deeper into the world of the unexplained with us. Join the conversation. Now, back to the show.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I know him as
what
Dr.
time frame was this?
Was
this
late 70s.
Late 70s? Okay.
Late 70s, early 80s. Yes. So I was in his office, and he had these 2 people there. They were twins, and it looked like they were twins. I don't know for sure, but they looked like they were related. They were both very light-skinned and very pale hair, so I'm assuming they had some type of albino condition. And, they seemed like they were adults. So he instructed them that to do some type of assessment or evaluation on me. And I'm just a little kid, so I pretty much do whatever anybody says. And
Yeah,
so
it's
they started
based upon they have you programs for the most part.
yeah, so they had these weird process that they were doing. They were looking in like my eyes, my ears, and they ended up, opening my mouth, and they said to stick my tongue out, and they wanted to look in my mouth. And these two people, and they turned to him, Dr. Green, and said, "Yes, we see the thing inside her." So that's when they put me into this program called Project Traveler. And for this particular program, this is something. There's other programs that I know about that they're trying to look for light beings that
Mhm.
fell to Earth, that are reincarnated in people, or have gone into people, that kind of thing. But this particular program, they're looking for some of the darker beings that fell in the beginning, that
Now
have been
you're talking about
reincarnated in people.
yeah, from heaven, correct? You're talking about the are you talking about the angels, or are you talking about the Nephilim, which
They want to look for any beings that are on the
oh,
darker aspect.
oh, okay.
And yeah, I don't, and like, so this is how I found out about myself during hypnosis. I was able to, so when I was getting my memories back, I decided to expand into hypnotic regression because I was having so much extreme anxiety.
Mhm.
I had gotten a new job, and I just couldn't, I couldn't function. And this was about 6 years ago. I couldn't function. And I knew there was something wrong. So I felt something pushing me to try to, because I couldn't figure it out. So I had a lot of like emotional instability at that time, and I had a professional job, so it was becoming very difficult to kind of continue in that. So I ended up, something was telling me. I felt like it wasn't just me. I felt like I was kind of being pushed. I felt like there was, people all around me, kind of pushing me to do a hypnotic regression.
Mhm.
And at that time, I was having a lot of paranormal experiences with some of the darker entities, and I was terrified. I've always been terrified of this kind of thing. I had almost to where it was like a phobia of mine. So during this hypnotic regression, I was able to view, some of my past lives, and I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know that I could go this deep where I could see things. And I call it almost like, the word I use is psi remote viewing,
Yeah.
because a lot of remote view is used kind of like a scientific process, and they
Mhm.
have, basic coordinates that they're using. Psi remote viewing is a psychic ability for me. So I'm using various methods, such as like bilocation, astral travel, um, and the remote viewing at the same time, and also hosting,
Oh, wow.
which to me is a form of trans mediumship, but a lot more complex.
That's what I was
So
saying.
I'm
So
using
no
all
one
these
puts you
different
under. You're
techniques.
actually doing this to yourself, correct?
Yes. I,
Mm.
I mean, the hypnotic regression, all she has to do is count it down. But do I need them to do it?
Mhm.
No. I can do this on my own, but I really do like having somewhere that, this sounds weird, but I do like having witnesses
Yeah.
to what I can do. And I've used quite a lot of different people, probably about six at this point, 6 or 7 people, because I feel like that add validity, not just to me, but to also to their process.
Mhm.
If I'm, that consistent with the same thing, and, everyone's seeing it, then I can say, yes, I'm doing this, and I want other people to see that, they're, look at this, what's happening. It's not
Yeah.
just me. So it's not just me saying, oh yeah, this happened to me by myself. There's been a lot of witnesses to this, and I record everything when this happens.
Okay.
That's
So let
why
me ask you one
that's
question. Let
how
me
I've
ask
been
you
able
this
to have.
question
Mhm.
before I forget. So this has been happening to you within the last 6 years. You went through that particular process, but when did you,
Mhm.
understand like all of this background information, all your whole life story of all that? Did you already have that retained in memory, or is it something that you had to take a dive into to make it manifest?
Definitely a dive, but I had a lot of conscious recall, and that's where I was just having memories of what I didn't know what it was.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know what
Then
these
so
things were.
okay.
I was having memories of past lives. I was having memories of missions, people that I don't know. Code words, everything, and I was just like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, I don't get it. And I had a lot of shifting alters, so my personalities were shifting rapidly, and when that gets out of control, you can't function like
Oh yeah,
I
that
am
would
now.
that would
This is
scare the
this
shit
is
out of
my
me. I would be
original
like,
self that
"What's happening?"
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is my original self that's speaking. So at that time when that was going through, I wasn't even this person.
Yes.
It was other other aspects of me that were kind of, kind of like battling for control. Like one would move out, then there would be another one. So it was very stressful. So when I did these hypnotic, I was going to talk about some of the past lives and why I was chosen based on these past lives for these particular missions and programs. So one of the past lives, and probably one of the more significant ones that I thought, was that I saw myself in and when I'm saying that I'm looking into these past lives, I'm not just like viewing it. You go there. You're there. There's no limit. If you can reach a specific state of consciousness, there are no limits for you. You can travel as far as you want, and you can be there in the present tense.
Wow.
Like I'm there. I'm not just looking at it.
Yeah.
Especially when I allow somebody, like when I'm under hypnosis, I'm not just looking and talking. I'm allowing any of these beings to actually take over my body. And not just, some people do channeling where they're just, people are telling them stuff to say and they're saying it. This is different. This is a word called hosting that actually demons taught me. They said that's what I do. It's called hosting. So it's what I'm hosting a being inside my body.
Yeah.
So it's letting them take over. So when they're doing that, I'm very calm. I'm
Okay,
very quiet.
do me a
I feel
favor.
fine. I feel relaxed.
Olivia, do me a favor.
Yes.
Because the way you tell the story is amazing, and I kind of want you to go back because I think I threw you off only because there is so much detail in the steps that you actually go through that are, I just don't want I don't want our listeners to miss out on, and they kind of get
Right.
disjointed and everything. So if you just really can, only because once they hear the different things, and then we can talk about like these are actually different lives that are playing out. But I definitely want them to hear what you've gone through and the experiences that you've had.
Which part do you want me to go next to?
I think you were at you were introduced to the twins, and
okay. So after the Project Traveler, so that's why I was good. That's why I was trying to talk about. I don't know if you want me to go into it, the past lives, because
for sure.
That's how they chose. That's why they chose me for Project Traveler, is these past lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to talk about the one where it was ancient times, and I went there and I saw myself, and I was something what they call like a dark jinn or a dark entity. And when I look at myself in that particular role, I was, more like a red energy. It wasn't a physical being. I've seen myself once in that role try to become physical, and it was so difficult that form ended up being like gnarled and knotted. Like it couldn't create like a true form like we would like, what we would think of, like as a jinn. It didn't. She stayed pretty much as energy, and she was more like a parasitical type dark entity. So she traveled through the bloodstream like a virus. So some of these entities are viral in nature, and which kind of, messed my brain up when I thought of that. I was like,
sure.
Whoa, that's interesting. So it's parasitical. So she would choose, somebody, these are ancient times, and she always says, her name is Harlowen, that part of me, she always says these were very seductive times. It's different from they are today. She said you don't really need these types of energies as much as you do today, because if you're looking for monsters, they're living next door to you. So it's not as, so this type of, that's how she talks. She said this, a dark entity isn't needed as much in your world because your monsters are next door, people that will hurt you and kill you. They live next door to you.
Exactly.
And I totally understood what she was saying when she said that. I'm like, I get it. So it was so strange to hear that, but she was saying that she would choose somebody, maybe she saw somebody walking in the desert or something, and that would be her prey. So what she wanted to do was infiltrate their life, and that's the beginning of that oppression type state that she, infiltrates their life and, scares them constantly, pushes her thoughts and energy into them constantly, because her main goal is to be able to take over that body in that form. And a lot of times they usually did, finally let her in, and she would take over. And once she took over that form, hosting in their bodies, she would either make them hurt themselves or somebody else, or completely destroy their lives.
And would you say this was for something malicious, or would this be something that, like are they doing this for like some purpose, or is it just to be malicious?
She's a demonic presence, so it was definitely malicious. But, in the same sense though, she said that she didn't understand the questions, like, what do you know, she didn't know that she was evil.
Hmm.
She said she thought she was helping people.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I'm helping them because, you know, they want this experience. They want to experience darkness. And when they call to me, I come. And she didn't understand why that was bad when she, you know, I'm giving them this darkness experience. That's what they're asking for. And she herself has said that, you know, she comes from the same place as the rest of us do,
Yeah,
you
well,
know, and a lot of
that's
the
interesting.
demonics.
That's interesting on this note is that, you know, if you believe in heaven or however, you know, wherever we go
Hmm.
and this, that, and the third, that some people want to have certain type of experiences in whatever plane they're in, come down and want to be murdered, filleted, you know, set on fire, just all these different things. So it's said that you've made these contracts with yourself or with your spirit before you've actually gotten into your body, and you play that out, and then you rinse and repeat and do whatever next thing that we all go through. So that I find that interesting that she said that.
Yeah, and she did experience it. And when she was done, you know, and that's how she ate. She said that's how she eats. She does this. That's her food, is to do this to people. And she always says that her brothers are the jinn and they're forever. So, you know, she always told me that the dark side has a strict hierarchy as well. So, you know, they take disrespect very seriously.
Hmm.
So sometimes when there's hypnotic regressions, they don't like being argued with. And I found that it's actually a little bit easier to just allow them to speak, and then they'll move on. You know, if you start arguing with them, then it becomes a battle, you know, and it's more like a battle, like, of respect. Like, I came here, you know, do you know where I'm from? Do you know who I am? And you called me here, and you know, you're talking crap to me the whole time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how that happens. And we have a lot that kind of fight back and get angry if you don't allow them to speak on what they want to speak about.
Hmm.
So that was one of the lives that I thought was really interesting, and that had an impact on why they chose me.
Hmm. Wow.
So there was, and they wanted that because they wanted this small group were doing, like I said, experiments and things, but they want to harness that power, because there is power in the dark side. And they're trying to measure it, evaluate it, and see how they can work for them. Because behind the scenes, it's all a power struggle. It's all about conquest.
Hmm.
You know, we're just living our normal lives, and we have no idea that the real world that's hidden is all about power and conquest. You know, we're just, moving around like little, robots compared to them. They're having a war, trying to take control of everything. We don't even know this. So it's so important for people to know that, there's a war going on behind the scenes already.
As far as just manipulation of human souls,
Everything.
money, so just everything.
All of it.
Wow.
All of it. All of it. And there was one other, so they chose me for that. And because they knew that the one thing they were wrong about was they thought I had an attachment. They thought that I was possessed.
Oh, okay.
So they were thinking they could measure that particular entity and, control it. And they were wrong the whole time, because I didn't have an attachment. It was just who I was. And when they saw the thing inside me was me. It was something that was deep down inside me. I had never, because I can't eliminate it.
Yeah.
No matter who I think I am in this life, I can't, there's no way for me to eliminate that life. So there was one, and when I was still young, at the psychiatric hospital, they took me to that place because they wanted to test it. So they put me in this kind of like a sensory deprivation, but it wasn't water. It was just a dark room. They had me sit in a chair. And I remember sitting there in pajamas, and they would hook me up to an IV, and it was days. There's no food or anything. They just sit there, and they wanted me to host, which means they wanted me to allow these entities to take over my body.
Oh, okay.
So
possession.
they could either like speak to them. I call it a voluntary possession, because that's what I do. It's almost like a voluntary possession, but it doesn't harm me. It doesn't psychologically or physically harm me. I'm able to push it out quite easily. I wouldn't recommend it to other people, because that's an ability that I have particularly, and I don't think other people can do this safely. So it's just something I can do.
Yeah.
So I would be sitting in the chair and, the entities would take over my body. And once in a while, they would try to put on a show for the people just because they knew that's what they wanted. And they even say that, sometimes we do these theatrical things because, people watch a lot of movies and that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to do a few of that to just appease them. And I found it really conflicting because these humans were torturing me and these entities were keeping me alive. While I was hosting them, they kept me alive with their energy because I wasn't getting any food or anything.
Wow.
So it was really conflicting to me that
so you had to be in that state, whether it was being weak from food or just inability to feel, want, need, other than
no
substance.
sensation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No sensation whatsoever. Just let them take over your body and see what happens, kind of thing. So yeah, I found that really conflicting to see, these demons keeping me safe and the humans are the ones that were torturing me.
Yeah.
So there was one other, and I think they took particular lives of mine that they found under their own hypnosis techniques. They found this because if I can find it, obviously they probably most likely found it too.
Yeah.
If I can find it this easy, they could find it. So there was one other life where there's a couple more lives where this is why I was chosen. So there was one life where I saw myself, it was about the 1400s and it was in Italy. And I was something what they consider like nowadays like a psychic medium. So I was just in the local village and I was helping people talk to their loved ones. It's kind of like the same thing where I'm able to let things talk through me. So she was helping, people that had, lost their loved ones and letting them speak to them one more time, that kind of thing. She thought she was doing really good. And they, if she was doing this, they would bring her vegetables and bread and things like that to pay. So one day these men came to her home and they literally punched her in the face. They, beat her and dragged her off to like this dungeon area. And she was down in this dungeon for a long time. So it was the Inquisition had come through. Somebody had told on her. The word had spread what I was doing in that village. Somebody had told on her. So she was stuck in this dungeon. And it was awful. They were like doing the same things, a lot of torture, a lot of, no food, no water, that kind of thing. And I actually, at the end of it, I actually died from dehydration and starvation. I didn't get burned at the stake or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
It was just for dehydration and starvation. And in the playroom at the psychiatric hospital, when they find these past lives and how you died, they want to double down on that trauma. So if you died a certain way, they'll use that again, that technique, to seal that trauma. So in this particular life, they had me hanging from the ceiling, just hanging there there was like ropes or chains from the ceiling, and they had my arms there. And my arms had no more feeling because I had been hanging so long. So at the psychiatric hospital, they hung me from a ceiling too, by my arms, because they knew that technique would work. However you died in a past life would even double down on that trauma. It would seal it so hard. So at the end of that, I was so angry. I was so angry with what they had done to me. My uncle had to take my children, and he brought them to the dungeon one time to see me because I was almost done. And I wish he wouldn't have done that, because the look on their faces was worse than like horror and disgust what they saw, because, it was just a small window in this dungeon area.
Yeah.
And they looked down at me, and there's just, they probably had nightmares for the rest of their lives by seeing, what happened to their mother, but he wanted to let them see me one more time. But I was so angry at all these men for what they had done that I had been praying and nothing happened. And so I prayed for anything. I said, whatever's out there, hurt them, revenge,
exactly.
Take vengeance for this. And I think like, it was, from what I felt, it was the darkness that answered. So I attached dark energy to myself, because of my anger in that time at those people for what they had done to me and, my family. And that's also like, it kind of stays with me, that ability as a psychic medium. It's still, kind of within me. So it didn't go away. I was in there just waiting dormant for me to, allow it to come forth and to stop being afraid.
Yeah.
I was always afraid of it. I wouldn't allow myself to do this. That was one of them. And so they were stacking up, learning about what kind of abilities I would have. I had this thing of, a demonic hosting that I could do based on being a jinn. And then this life, I was, a psychic medium, so they could use that. And then
So
there was this
basically,
other
they're
life.
stacking
Yes.
your abilities by allowing you to access them or knowing and bringing them to fruition, meaning bringing them out, and then you're able to utilize these abilities once they're all,
Yes.
that's
And
incredible.
they wanted this, and they wanted to use these for their own gain. So
Mhm.
there was one other life where it was about the late 1700s, early 1800s, and I was a male in that life, and I had been on my own a really long time, ever since childhood.
Yeah.
I had lost my parents really young. They passed away, so I was almost like a street kid. So I would travel around, I was living that kind of like vagabond type lifestyle. And I met another gentleman, and we were kind of friends, and we lived together, but we were both of the same type of person. And what we were is, people that would harm, innocent people. We would harm them. So we would both go and travel from village to village, seeking out kind of like people that we could harm. And it was usually women. We would find them, out in the fields or whatever, and harm them and, leave them. And there was one village we went to, and we started to get careless because we had been doing it so much, and there was something inside. We were just not good people.
Yeah.
There was something inside us. So we were at this village, and we'd become careless, and we had just assaulted someone, and left her in the fields. She wasn't alive. And we had gone to the local pub, and we were just drinking and, giggling and laughing type of thing. And we were the only newcomers in that village. They had all known each other. So they knew, the only weird new people in this town and what had just happened. So we ran as fast as we could. We found a barn, and we went into the barn. We thought we could hide there, but they found us there, and they locked us in the barn and set it on fire. And I remember at the end trying to go up high to get into the rafters, but they ended up burning us alive, and we totally deserved it.
Yeah.
I want to say we did deserve that treatment for what we had done. And, being burned alive is not an easy way to go, but I deserved it in that life. But to me, I can see that experience and why they would want somebody like that to work for them, because they think they could use me, to do things, that would require some type of physical violence at some point, if necessary. They see that in you. Okay, so this is what you were before. It's always going to be there. If they were to program, me a certain way, and they did a lot. They did some things where they would try to hold your hand over fire and things like that. That kind of brings that out in you, because especially since I died like that, it's a trauma that's sealed in your body somewhere.
Well, I hope to not ever know my past lives. Although I do believe there's one for me, and I was a roof maker, and I'm good with that. But
Okay.
it's interesting on how you can recount this verbatim. I mean, it's just like, it's incredible the detail that you have for these past lives to be able to. Did you constantly keep going back to these scenarios, or did you just remember it because it's in your memory?
It's in my memory, and I'm remembering it now. Even when you talk about it, of us being in that, being in the barn, hearing all those people, come in and locking us in. It's the memory is solid.
Wow.
Obviously memories fade.
Yeah.
So if anybody ever has memories like this,
well,
it's definitely
traumatic ones don't
write
fade.
It down.
Traumatic ones stay.
Yeah. This is what I try to tell people. They're like, how do you remember all this? I'm like, it's trauma. It's death and pain. It stays with you. You sometimes you remember these more than you remember the happy times, because it imprints on you somehow. That's how, and I feel like a lot of people can do this if they wanted to. I'm not saying it's for everyone.
Oh, for sure.
This is something that for me, something had been lit inside me that I needed to find out everything. I needed to find all the truth about me and what had happened to me. It was just so important to me.
Unlocking one ability that allows you to pull these forward and to, take a deep dive is all you pretty much need to open the floodgates, in that sense. And I think you probably did that. And that's why you're able to recount it so fluently.
Yeah. And there was one other life, just one more, that was essential to why they chose me. And it was ancient times. And it looked like Egypt or somewhere like that. And I'm a male in that time. And all of us, there was thousands of us, we were just walking around moving sand and just constantly moving. Nobody spoke to each other. We barely made eye contact. Nobody did. We weren't eating, we weren't drinking anything. And I remember seeing this giant being like overlording over us. It was a tall, like, it almost looks like a dog person. I call them the dog people.
Oh.
And yeah, so it was a giant person, and he was, and what was really strange is this was my very first hypnotic regression session that I did when I saw this.
Yeah.
And what was strange is that I had no idea that when I'm viewing him, it was almost, he could see me in present time. So he could see me laying in my bed, this dog person, because the limits of time, it slips away. I promise you, there's no limit. He saw me, and he literally said, while I'm laying in bed doing a regression, he said, get back to work. He thought I was slacking on the job. It was so crazy that he said that. He was like, get back to work. And he said it in my mind because it was really strange how powerful these beings were. And there was a huge ship over the pyramid, and they're so powerful. One of these these dog people were commanding thousands. Imagine just if they had a group of them. If one person was that strong, he had technology like in the staff, and it was all tech. They were very advanced, and we were building something they called flash portals.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like portal technology. And they wanted it built quickly. So then they, pretty much we all worked ourselves to death. Like they literally worked you until you just passed out and died. They didn't care if you had food or water. They didn't want to sustain any humans. They didn't care about that. So that's where that slavery mentality came from. And they used that. They knew I had been a slave before. So they knew they could turn me into something like that, to where I would just break down so much that I would do whatever they said.
So these were like Anubis looking creatures.
Huge. And not friendly, and not, very advanced though, but not very friendly.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask something that everybody, when they hear this, is going to ask. Who built the pyramids? Like, were you able?
It was humans.
So you think it was humans? You don't think it was UFOs? You don't think it was different race?
Well, they were there overlording us. They're the like grand masters of the technology of it. Yeah. But we were the ones moving the sand and everything.
Oh, okay.
And literally, I just died on the steps of one of the pyramids because
wow.
you break down after a while with no food, or you're just done. So that life was in me, that slavery mentality, because I had been a slave before. So it was there inside me, and they wanted to tap into that to turn me into something. So that's what they did at the hospital. They broke down our psyches so much, and they were trying to compartmentalize the brain, where you're having these pockets inside you where they could train them and reprogramming. So you'd shatter down to nothing. They would break you down to nothing to rebuild you back up into what they wanted you to be. So that ended up having 118 of these, pieces of me, which I consider alters. They call alters as just like almost not just a personality, because if I'm looking inside my mind, I've done this. I've gone and tried to meet these alters and see them, view them, what they're doing. And I've looked inside my mind, and let me tell you, everybody, for anyone in the world, you'll not believe how complex the mind is. You have no idea how absolutely complex it is. It is like a world inside you. You really do. And when people talk about the matrix, they talk about it as an external thing. Yeah. And when I viewed the inside of my mind, the matrix was inside the mind. It's an individual matrix. Everyone has this matrix built up inside your mind. It was insane to see that, because, I see people think it's on the outside. It's inside you, in your brain.
Now, with that being said, do all of our minds connect? I mean, like access, or everybody has their individual, like, they're their individual God or individual person?
I feel like mine, it was individual. That's just my experience. I can't speak for anyone else, but I felt like it was individual.
Yeah.
And I saw some of my altars, and there was one particular altar, and this one is something I consider a survival altar. So if she comes around or seeps into my subconscious, that means there's danger in my immediate environment. So I get very nervous when I see her. So this was someone I had seen for my whole life, and it looked like a possessed, scary, little girl. I would see her all the time. She would seep into my subconscious, my dreams. I would dream of her like sitting on top of my chest, holding me down, smiling in my face. was terrified of her. I was terrified. I thought it was a ghost. I thought it was a demonic ghost following me around. I really did. I thought I needed, sage in the house, and I always thought that. It took a long time for me to figure out that the thing that I was afraid of, I always say it was like that shadow in the dark, that shadow reaching out to me, the darkness in the room, that was me. I was afraid of myself this whole time. It was because she's a part of me. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, that altar is inside me because it was created during torture in a playroom when I was a little kid. And when I saw the world she had built, it really did look like something a child would create, and would think of as a scary place. It looked like a childlike scary vision. Like there was a little cemetery and she was in this like little haunted forest. When I looked at her, she wears this dirty white nightgown with her hair covering her face. And I saw her in the woods with like this giant like antler type demonic figure, like a Wendigo type. I saw her holding its hand. And it was so strange to see her like, she had built this world. She even said that, I built this world inside you. They build worlds inside you. Wow. These personalities aren't just, we think of, personalities as just like a simple, you change your voice kind of things. There's a world inside you built in your mind. So if I see her, like I said, I get very nervous because she says if she comes out, nothing else is going to survive but her, because that's what it's meant to do. It's a survival altar. It's only supposed to be, during the most direst of circumstances. So if my life was threatened, that's the time that she would try to, jump and take over and make sure that I'd stay alive.
And this still goes on. She can potentially manifest, and along with the other go ahead.
I just saw her a few weeks ago, which freaked me out.
Oh wow.
And I saw her a couple weeks ago because about, I don't know, I want to say 4 years ago, I worked really hard with my hypnotherapist. She's my mentor. She's been great. Her name is Misha Johnston. She's pretty well known in the art community. We worked really hard to put these altars to sleep because they were shifting too much. I needed, myself back. I couldn't do this. So I really worked really hard, and they agreed to go to sleep for me. I spoke to them all. I said, the work's done. It's time for you to go, retire pretty much. And they did. They agreed. So they really don't have control of me anymore. And it was a long process to try to kind of become reacquainted with my original self that I was supposed to be. So I'm still learning. I'm still, trying to, figure out who that person was or was supposed to be, because I had so many different alters. It was kind of hard. And it's really strange now to, have myself try to, speak normally when sometimes I used to rely on some of these other, individuals if I needed a certain behavior in different situations. We have to, adjust ourselves to different situations, but she could literally turn into somebody else in a different situation. And that was really weird to see, some of the things I had done before. I'm like, that's not really, who I am. But it's hard to explain to people. It really wasn't me, but it is me. It's a really complex situation. But I was going to say, I saw her a few weeks ago, and it freaks me out because then I know there's danger. There's danger around. She wouldn't come if there wasn't danger. So then I can't sleep the whole night, and I have to turn the lights on and check all the doors, and I know there's danger. And it could be anything. It could be government danger. It could be real danger, somebody outside the door. I don't know. But I saw her, and she was like, it looked like we were chained up in an attic together. She gave me this vision, and we were chained together. And I looked in her face, and it's terrifying. It's almost like looking at, the girl from The Exorcist, just staring at her face. It's terrifying. And because I think she pulled, when she created herself, she pulled different images from my own subconscious to see, what would be the most terrifying thing, and that's what it was. So, and then her eyes were so huge, and she just kept staring at me. And I'm like, I can't, I'm frozen. And she pretty much, I thought she was going to hurt me, but she said, I love you. And she gave me advice on how, if one of the altars were trying to take over and I couldn't control myself, if I couldn't control it, she gave me advice on how to fix that. She told me what to do, and she gave me, and I was really thankful for that. So I can use that measure now in case, one of them kind of steps forward.
So does that happen though? Forward. Does that happen?
It only happens about maybe once a year or twice a year if I get triggered by something. And recently I was triggered by a movie. It was really strange, and And when I switch altars, it can be a physical experience, not just mental. It's a physical experience because my face will go numb. My lips will go numb, and I have a really hard time speaking. So I can talk a lot when I'm just my normal self, but in altar, I really have a hard time communicating and speaking. So I physically know, my higher self knows there's something, off. I know something is taken over, like something's wrong. They're trying to, kind of keep me in a certain space because something's wrong. And then I know there's danger, or there's a threat, or something's off. So, like I said, this happens quite a bit. I got triggered by a movie, and a lot of it is, it's mice. The word mouse, seeing mice.
Now you do
mice
know
in the environment, movies with
you
mice.
named your book.
Yes, because it's always been an issue for me, and it's because it was a programming code particular to my experience. They wanted to create this inside me to be this gray mouse. So it's a code, and it's particular to me. And the gray mouse is somebody that they used for corporate espionage. They wanted me to get in and get out of places and be very quiet, because it doesn't require noise. You can't make noise if you're going to be doing this. You have to be an invisible person if you're going to slip in and slip out of somewhere. So they created this altar, this gray mouse, to do that. So anytime, but the gray mouse also is, because of that experience, I feel, and the way the company treated me that I was forced to work for, that was always a threat of death. So if the gray mouse kind of, feels like she's coming out, then I feel anxious because she's anxious, because it's almost like she feels nervous that she'll have to do something she doesn't want to do under threat of death. They always, there was always a threat of death with these companies. It wasn't just like, because we were slaves, we didn't get paid. You don't get paid for any of this. The force to do it. This is all you do. There's no questioning it and things like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. So in this process of all this occurring, and then them pulling these particular past lives up, what did the government use you for? Like, what were they doing with you?
Thanks for listening to part 1 of our exclusive interview with Olivia James, author of the Grey Mouse series. We've only scratched the surface of Olivia's incredible story, and there's much more to come. In part 2, we'll delve deeper into Olivia's experiences, exploring the connections between mind control and the occult. We'll also discuss the impact of her revelations and what they might mean for our understanding of reality. Stay tuned for the second part of this captivating conversation. You're listening to Strange Darkness Radio.